Adrian Newey has been announced as the team principal of Aston Martin beginning in 2026. Now, this is one of the most surprising stories I have ever heard in Formula 1 and just so unexpected. We have been hearing rumors recently about the fact that maybe Christian Horner might be joining Aston Martin, maybe there's a little bit of internal friction, and I think that the fact that Newey has now been appointed as the team principal, which is not a position that I think any of us expected for him to ever take up, it does point to the fact that inside of Aston Martin, whilst they are still nowhere near the chaotic disaster that is Alpine, we are starting to see a high level of turnaround and a lot of restructuring going on with a lot of the key personnel inside of the team as well. And now in October of 2024, Andy Cowell, who was, again, also a massive hire by Aston Martin, he was the engine guru at Mercedes at the beginning of the hybrid era, of course, was a massive part to all of that incredible success that Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg had with Mercedes. He joined as CEO at the beginning of October in 2024, and then at the beginning of this year, in January of 2025, he then replaced Mike Crack as team principal, with Mike Crack being demoted to chief trackside officer. Now, that in itself was a major change, but it kind of made sense. I mean, Andy Cowell has all of that experience, he's an incredible leader, and we kind of thought that he would be the long-term team principal, and it just made a lot of sense. Then at the beginning of the season as well, in March, Adrian Newey started work at Aston Martin, and almost immediately, actually in Monaco, we started to see kind of Adrian have an effect on the team in terms of analyzing the weaknesses. He pointed out that the people and some of the engineers were not in the right places, that's something that he would really want to kind of improve in terms of putting the right people where they need to be. And he also mentioned things like a weakness in terms of their simulation tools. So yeah, very early on, Adrian kind of pinpointed some of the weaknesses. He began doing what kind of he was there to do, manage the technical department, and that's kind of what we thought he was going to do at Aston Martin long term. However, even a few weeks ago at the beginning of November, already there was a big story about 7 different staff exiting Aston Martin as Adrian began to implement some of the changes that he felt needed to be made. And then less than a month later, he is announced as taking over from Andy Cowell as team principal for the beginning of 2026, with Cowell being demoted to chief strategy officer. And now, really quickly, just focusing on Andy Cowell, because he's not just some guy, he's a major part of the team. He's an incredible asset and engineer and resource to the team as well. He will be focusing on optimizing the technical partnerships at Aston Martin between the team, between their brand new power unit supplier Honda, their fuel supplier Aramco, and their lubricant supplier Valvoline as well, to make sure that there is a seamless transition between the team, the power unit, the fuel, and then also the chassis as well. So the really interesting thing is that when we think of the team principal role, it is such a massive role that encompasses so many different facets of Formula 1. I mean, the commercial side, the business side, the politics side, managing the team on the ground, managing the contracts, and probably 50 more things, media appearances, even things like that. It's such an all-encompassing role, being a motivator as well. I mean, I'm just, so many things are coming to mind. It's a massive role that's only getting bigger, especially as the sport kind of becomes a lot more open, as we get a lot more access, and even increasing the value of the team. That is also the role of the team principal, as we have seen Toto Wolff do over the past kind of few years. And it just seems a little bit bizarre, because I wouldn't say that that's what I see Adrian Newey as. Now, I guess in the eyes of Aston Martin, something that Aston Martin did mention is that certainly from the business side, Lawrence Stroll, who of course is not only the chairman but also the owner of Aston Martin, he will lead the business functions of the team. That's what Aston Martin have said. So straight away, even though Adrian Newey is kind of being announced as the team principal, they're already trying to take away a few kind of key areas of responsibility that they know Adrian is not going to be interested in. So yeah, it's very interesting in terms of what kind of team principal role Adrian is actually going to have, because I think everyone expected him to just be on the car side. He is the car guru, isn't it? The greatest designer of all time. We expected him to kind of lead that technical team, to potentially lead Aston Martin to start winning races and maybe even championships. But I don't really get why he has been promoted, or why he wants to be promoted to team principal. Now, in terms of the why, I think it's very clear that this was not part of the plan. When Adrian joined, if this was part of the plan, and if he always wanted to be team principal, when he got shares into the team and that's kind of what enticed him to join Aston Martin, he would have just been team principal when he joined in March. The fact that this has happened kind of after the fact clearly shows that there was a little bit of tension, maybe some disagreement in terms of between him and Andy Cowell, because again, Adrian had big ideas of how the team needs to be restructured. I think what Stroll has almost decided to do is basically double, triple, quadruple down on Adrian Newey. He has given Adrian the keys to the kingdom, and that is why Andy Cowell has been demoted and Adrian has been promoted to basically the outright leader of the team. Now, again, there is certain aspects of being a team principal that I just have never seen Adrian Newey kind of want to do. The one thing that we know about him is that he hates politics. He just wants to kind of be in charge of the technical side of the team because he is a big ideas guy. He can look at a set of rules and find the parameters where you can squeeze the most amount of performance, and that is how he's managed to excel. That is, for example, how Red Bull started the ground effect era being so dominant, because it was Adrian Newey that was in charge of the suspension of the 2022 Red Bull, and that was kind of the big performance differentiator. That is what Adrian excels, and I've just never seen him as someone who potentially is going to be doing, you know, commercial meetings, or someone who really wants to get kind of involved in a lot of the politics of Formula One. And unfortunately, if you want to be a team principal, you have to be involved in the politics. I mean, a really good example that we're seeing recently is with this kind of McLaren Red Bull battle over the past couple of years. Whenever, you know, McLaren have been quick, it was Red Bull that kind of started to point to the flexi wings argument, and, you know, there was a lot of kind of going backwards and forwards between Zach Brown and Christian Horner. So it's all part of the game. It's exactly what we saw in 2021 between Horner and Wolff. I just do not see kind of Adrian Newey performing that same role. I don't see him as this master politician who's gonna kind of fight incredible battles against the FIA in the boardrooms. And this is the bizarre kind of aspect of him becoming a team principal. You know, this is something that I've never heard him ever mention in any interview that he's wanted to be a team principal, because his kind of incredible strength is on the technical side and not just the car design, but leading a technical department. So yeah, this is going to be very, very interesting in terms of the responsibilities that Aston Martin are actually going to take away from Adrian Newey and things that he does not want to do because they are not his strength. So yeah, it's just fascinating. Adrian is a very interesting character, massively competitive, as we know, but he's not exactly the most kind of outspoken figure. And so what kind of team principal he's going to be is going to be very interesting to see. You know, he's more of kind of the engineer side, and we have seen a massive revolution of the engineer to team principal. I think McLaren is a very interesting model to kind of compare it to, because at McLaren you have Andrea Stella, who is of course engineering driven, and then you also have Zach Brown, who is commercially driven. And both of them operate in kind of two different facets. So Zach Brown is the overall CEO. He does everything to do with the marketing and then also the sponsorship side of the team. He is also the one that sorts the driver contracts. And then when it comes to Andrea Stella, he runs the race team. He is all about the kind of technical structure. He manages that part as well as the team on the ground, kind of during the Grand Prix weekends, the strategy side of the car as well. And it works incredibly well. You know, they have different strengths, and yeah, it's worked incredibly well at McLaren. With all of this turnaround, and we know that potentially even, you know, this might even change again. You know, if Adrian decides that maybe this is not quite how he wants to get the best out of himself, maybe they are going to bring in, you know, Christian Horner, who has been kind of heavily linked and heavily rumored to Aston Martin over the past few months. So yeah, it's very interesting in terms of what is happening at this team, because whilst I am not going to say that it's anywhere near as chaotic as what we've seen at Alpine, this is a team that has been underperforming relative to the resources that they have at hand. Even during the ground effect era, you know, their best period at the beginning of 2023, it was kind of supplemented by the fact that Ferrari and Mercedes genuinely massively dropped the ball in carrying over very bad concepts from 2022, and ever since then, Aston Martin have failed to properly develop their car. 2026 is a massive reset and a massive opportunity, but there is also a lot of pressure on this team as well, because how much have we heard about the potential of this team? You know, brand new factory, all of these amazing hires. They have Fernando Alonso, and at the moment they still don't have anything to show. And so the fact that we're seeing all of this restructuring, it shows that this team, whilst it might still be on a good trajectory, everything is not exactly going as they planned it out. So yeah, there is still a lot of expectations for Aston Martin. Whether they're going to be able to live up to them in 2026, or maybe perhaps it'll be a little bit too early for this organization to really fight for podiums, we are going to have to wait and find out. But by far, one of the biggest storylines next year, and what I'm looking forward to, is Adrian Newey, the greatest car designer of all time, how is he going to be as the team principal of Aston Martin? Is he going to be political when he needs to be? Is he going to go to bat for his drivers and for his team? Is he going to attack the other teams, you know, if they're beating them? Because we all know that those kind of Machiavellian battles are all part of Formula One, especially during a title battle. I just don't see Adrian Newey as that kind of guy, but maybe am I in the wrong for potentially writing off Adrian Newey? That is a very, very dangerous thing to do. But again, that is why this shock announcement that Adrian is going to become the team principal of Aston Martin is one of the most shocking storylines of 2025 so far. Well, there you have it. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments box down below. I can't wait to see what you all have to say. And if you did enjoy this video and want to support the channel, then don't forget to subscribe. That would be massively appreciated. And I'll see you in the next one.